mind, Jackson?
And me, Jackson, please.
We were just making fun of you, but we needed it too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think he's got his. He's on top of it.
I'm sorry, what?
She must have a non-compliance.
Pardon?
She's demanding Laura's presence. And welcome to Community Standards.
Oh, that's not okay.
That's not okay.
That's not okay.
I'll go out there in just a second. Let me get this.
We'll bring Laura back in now. Yeah.
That's okay, Jackson.
Go outside.
She just can't talk like that to staff.
No, ever.
I'll go out.
Go out. Let's take 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Need to make it 20 tomorrow. Well, we got work to do here.
Well, I had added one. Did you show up? I added one. Communication.
Yeah, I did on mine.
Yeah, that's what they tell me.
It's on
It didn't
this,
come.
it's on this one though, isn't it?
No.
All right, we're just going to wait 1 minute.
No.
Patrick, we will try this again when you're ready. All right, we'll kick off. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, everyone online. We'll kick off with the workshop today. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
And a second from David. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Today, we do not have Kevin, and we do not have Mary Ann, so we're 5 people. The first item is the approval, I'm sorry.
You're good.
The first item is the approval of the minutes for the board workshop of May 20th. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second from Vanessa. Okay, any comments? I had 2 comments, more or less minor, but on the page 2, under the Parks and Facilities Master Plan, the survey was prematurely closed by Los Design. I'd just like to say by Los Design. It wasn't by
by us,
CCMC.
Right.
And I would also like to add 1 sentence under the new website launch, which is where the board had a motion and passed it, Rachel, that we would go live on June 10th to provide an extra week just to let everything be in good shape. So if we could add because I think we actually did a motion.
We did.
The only other thing I would point out, the minutes are correct. However, with respect to the Osceola County agreement, it's my understanding they're actually voting tonight, June 3rd. We had said, Steve had said he thought the vote would be on June 10th. It actually will be tonight, am I correct?
It is
It
today.
is today, tonight, yes.
So the minutes are
But
correct.
the minutes are correct.
Three corrections, right?
So then, do we want to amend the motion to
Go
add?
ahead and have them taken care of right now, so if you want to amend the motion and reapprove.
I'll amend my motion.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so that passes.
Can I ask a clarification question? It's not about the minutes. Why was it that the survey was closed prematurely? Because I know it was extended.
It was closed in the morning. It was an accident,
Oh.
and
But it was extended.
And they reopened it immediately. So it was just,
Oh.
Okay. Literally, it was just one of those snafus in
Okay.
technical language, and as soon as they were told, it took them 5 minutes to have it back up. So there was,
But it was already in an extended time period.
it was an extended
Yeah, okay.
time period. It was just,
Got it.
it got shut down in the morning instead of the afternoon.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
What?
You have a week.
coffee issues this morning.
This is a bad day.
Stick with my water with my lid.
Okay.
Well, it's education.
Okay, top 10 priorities. If everybody in the audience has one, we had copies for everybody. If anybody doesn't have one. The idea here with this that we've discussed is that there are lots of things that go on. And sometimes I feel that, okay, what are the true and real priorities? And if you can call that up above. So we're calling up above, but it's there. My thought process was that if because we went through an evolutionary process over the last couple, 3 months of how do we talk about what are priorities and stuff like that. But if we sit there and like once a month, and I think once we set it up once, then it's easy to do it. And they could literally go in the board package at the end of the month and, okay, these are the real focus items that the board wants for a direction. It doesn't mean they're the only 10 items being worked, but when you talk about what are the items that are the major focus items for the board, CCMC, and going forward with the town, that was the thought process here. I've had other people, like Laurel last time, had an interest when she actually came up and spoke at the end of the meeting, and I've had other people approach me and say, hey, they actually would like to see where we want management focused. So that was the idea here. I welcome any comments, but then along those lines, let's start looking at it. This list here goes from A to
Double I.
double I, H, H,
Double I. There's
where?
one you missed.
I added an I.
Okay, yeah, we can make the print here. So, there will always be new items come up, like when we had the basketball courts come up, that wouldn't have been on our list at the time, and then it became pretty clear that, are you doing updates? Here, this is for Vanessa, so you can see other people's thoughts here. You're going to, at the top, and going to need to freeze it so we can actually, do a Windows freeze thing.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
And so with that as background, any comments before we talk about the general items as an approach?
Some of us were late doing our homework.
Yeah, one general comment is, the challenge with this, I know there was, what does it add up to, 35 items or so? All of them are important. It's just a matter of how do we prioritize our time. So each of these can get accomplished
There's some
at
things,
some level.
yeah, there's some things that you're going to immediately be able to cross off within the next month or so, and as soon as that happens, then something else will be moved up, is my perception. Is that,
I think that's true.
or added?
The challenge was, when identifying top 10, it's like, oh, then I leave this one off, and then I have to leave that one off. But that was just a challenge. It's just doesn't mean it's not important, it just means
Right.
it's a matter of prioritization.
Well, I think the other part, if I could just say, is that I suspect that, while we can reach consensus generally, individual board members are going to have different priorities based on the tasks that we've been assigned to by the board. So, in putting together my list, I probably put a heavier weight on the things that I'm working on. But that doesn't mean I don't think the other items are important. It's just that for me, my focus would be this. So I think as we come to a consensus, it may be that it reflects not anyone's specific agenda so much as the broad-based, where can we reach an agreement?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, are these, some of these are short-term, some are long-term priorities, and I treated it as long-term. I didn't treat it as, what do we want to do next week? So I thought there was really like two groupings. What do we want to do now? What do we want to look at overall for the rest of the year anyway?
Kevin sent me an email, which I saw literally 10 minutes before this meeting because I spilled coffee and we were all cleaning it up, which I will forward to you. No, that was you. And Kevin will agree with whatever we do. He doesn't agree totally with the concept of 10 priority items because he feels management should be doing everything. I struggle with, okay, where are we as a board really wanting priorities set? What has become more and more crystal clear to me in my role as president, and David and I have had this conversation actually, and you've been a president before, is it's nice to say your title is president, it's nice to say your title is a director, CCMC still is the one that executes all the day-to-day type stuff. You know, we do this for 2 hours one day, we do it for 3 hours another day, and at the end of the week, we've all put in our 20 hours, but we're not giving anybody direction, we're not doing anything that gets something done on a day-to-day basis. So the best we can do, I think, is say, where are our priorities, and then monitor against those, because that at least allows management to know what it is we think. Because it just becomes clearer and clearer to me as we go through this. The management company runs all the day-to-day type stuff, and we are an advisory board almost in a lot of ways. And, I mean, we have certain powers clearly, but that's where I was thinking with this.
And I think to Vaughn's point, you know, the day-to-day emergencies that come up, the things that you know, frankly, fill a lot of our email inboxes are things that go under that item of, you know, doing the daily business of the town. And then for us as a board, taking the longer-term view, as we are with the Parks and Rec facility master planning and the UCF study and the sustainability studies and so on. These are longer-term directional pieces and probably reflect the priorities of the board on an ongoing basis in a more sustainable way. So I think it's got both values.
Should we redo this in 2 categories, the long-term, short-term, or just leave it as it is? See, I saw cameras, I put cameras, number 2, because I saw this something immediately, cameras for the pool areas, for security and the lakeside. But, I don't know, I had a problem with the immediate versus long-term.
I did too.
Well, I was going to say that just because it's not in the top 10 doesn't mean it's not being worked on, but
Right.
if say, for instance, it's Todd's to work on, he's going to work on the priority before he works on the other, but he's got other things that are on this list that he will be working on as we go.
Yeah. Sure got quiet in here.
Laurel Russo, 709 Bloom Street. My one observation is I looked down this list, and I think could be a clarifier in a way, is when I look at this list, I'm always thinking first, what are your duties based on the documents first? And then, because this list is a mix of what you're obligated, kind of, right? Hurricane preparedness is definitely something that would, I think, fall under you folks in CCMC to communicate to the residents, and I know there was some debate on how well that was done during the last one, and why weren't those protocols in place, et cetera. And then just as a side anecdote, I would say I spent Memorial Day at, you know, the pool, lakeside, and I know that's an ongoing issue, and I don't go there and swim regularly, but I'm looking up and I'm seeing the blow-up stuff that's come out of the shower handle that's there, and there was one lifeguard blasting music, but she was sitting inside the thing, and nobody came on to do the lifeguard loop until 4:30, and we've had all those conversations, I've heard them here before. I'm kind of looking at maybe what are the duties that are must-dos that come down to what we've paid dues for, so our pool should be nice and the lifeguard should be there, and we have these contracts, and hurricane preparedness is certainly crucial, safety at the ball courts, you know, those sorts of things, and then go into the, how do we elevate the community even more and upsize it? What are those sustainability issues? What are these other ball fields and other things that just enhance and expand our community? So I'm frustrated on an ongoing basis at feeling that maybe the bare minimum hasn't been tackled first as well as it could be, or to the letter of the documents. And so let's get that done first and then go and dream bigger on all these other things. So that would just be an observation from sort of the ground that, you know, I certainly know the next hurricane that comes around, I'd like it really, really nuts on with everything. Maybe that's in place and we haven't heard an update on that type of thing. But farmer's market would be my other quick example. There's still a total lag between Lexington clearing off all those signs and gates and fences and everything. And so every Monday, maybe rolling into Tuesday, anybody downtown has to look at those eyesores before they get pulled away. Every time I ask about it, no, there's a whole confusion, who needs to do it, et cetera. So I know Susanna's tackled that some, but why is that not kind of like clockwork? The minute the thing is done, Lex and guys are here Sunday, move those out of the way, like basic cleanliness things that kind of come into play, so my observation. Thanks.
I thought that was under J, the daily business of town on a courteous, professional, and timely manner.
That's
And
where I
think-
included mine too. All of those type of daily businesses and things like that, those should be our number one. I think most, a lot of us put that as our number one priority.
I mean, one of the things we don't have on here, but we know we have to do is a budget and a level of service review. And as I recall from last year, that took a considerable amount of time for a period of several months to do that. So it doesn't show as one of these priorities, and yet I know that for, a couple of months, we'll be doing it. We'll be locked up in that. And I think it goes to Laurel's question about doing the business of the town, taking care of the nuts and bolts. If we don't have enough resources to do the things that we want around our pools or whatever, then that's the place that we have to get that figured out, is the level of service, right?
Yeah, and I think Laurel's got some very valid points. We're having an executive committee meeting actually on Wednesday to start getting into level of service. And is it there, is it not there? And I struggle with, I don't ever go to Lakeside. I mean, I used to go to Heritage Hall and stuff like that. It should be at a level, we're talking about a cell of service later. Is a cell of service getting, in theory, it should be the, hey, there's an issue here, is it getting dealt with timely? Lifeguards to me is a fascinating topic in some ways. We have lifeguards at one pool, we're only supposed to have them from 12 to 8. Once you have something, then everybody thinks you have it for every place. No, I mean, you're looking at me like you're weird, but okay. I won't argue with you, because I don't go there, you may be right, but it's well, I hope you're wrong, but you're probably right, because I know you're pretty accurate. But then we should have the question of, okay, where are the basic things that we should have? What are the nice twos that we have? And once we start with a nice two under the level of service, then when does it become an expectancy? And how much money are you spending on an expectancy? So I think there's quite a bit of stuff there. Under the level of service, I think it goes to a lot of what you're talking about there. And do we, then we got to talk about, do we have adequate staff? Are we really set up to do what we need to do, or are we stretching things way too thin? And if you push on a piece of string, you always just get a string that combobulates. So I agree with you, and we're starting that conversation. It will ultimately lead to a public conversation, because it needs to.
So just to expand a little bit, I think all of us, at least for the ones that I've seen, do have item J, doing the daily business of the town, as a top priority. And I think to Laurel's point, of the issue of hurricane and communication, I remember that from a couple of years ago. So I added an item, I don't know that it shows up on the printed list, I added an item II when I filled out my form. I called it communication. So while that should be, in my view, part of doing the daily business of the town on a courteous, professional, and timely basis, when we renegotiated the contract with CCMC 2 or 3 years ago, we changed the paragraph that I think Disney probably had at the beginning. It was called Public Relations or Public Affairs, which sounded more like a CYA approach, to be more proactive. So what I wrote is item II, and it's to your point, Laurel, communication. I wrote proactive, inclusive, frequent, and positive. I mean, we can add other words like accurate, that doesn't imply that it's inaccurate, but that we could, be helpful to our residents, particularly like with hurricanes or with something that happened with an apartment complex a couple of years ago, or whatever's happening with Island Village, or this or that, or so forth. But more and more aggressive, positive, out there, engaging, and helpful communication for our residents. So I added that as my priority number 2, right after doing the business of the town. But it speaks to a couple of your points, Laura.
What if we had categories of, say, security, amenities, and then put, because there's things in here that actually fall in the same category.
Well, it's like with
Security enhancement, Lakeside Athletic Fields, and you have cameras up there. Maybe if we had categories of security, amenities,
Right.
financial, and then and then prioritize in the category. I just found it, I mean, this is a good start, I just had trouble picking number 1 and number 10,
Right,
they're all
right,
important.
it is hard. It's a good exercise, it generates a good discussion.
I agree it's chaotic, and having been the president for a couple, 3 months, and I realized that how you end up running everything is you have an email thing with a box of folders, and you start going through your folders and trying to sort and find things. I mean, I asked another question, can't remember if I copied you all or not this week, on do we have, and this kind of speaks to what Laurel just said too, do we have a level of service agreement?
Yes,
Which,
yeah.
you know, says, all right, if someone calls in and they got, someone sends an email and they got an issue, do we have a level of service that says we're going to respond in 24 hours, 48, 72, pick a time period? Or if someone calls in for a public comment from a newspaper, or somebody does this or that, do we have that? And the short answer is no. We kind of have rule of thumb policy that's evolved, and so to me, when it goes to, you know, what probably we'll all agree is number 1 is doing the day-to-day job, I still, to me, and CCMC manages over 800 communities nationwide. Somebody has to have thought this through, and there has to be software that says our level of service requirements for Lakeside or for pools in general or something is we do this, 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 this. And the right answer in my mind on something like that is, you know, we ought to be able to say, here's a document. The document's on the front porch, the enhanced new front porch, you know, and here's our level of service standards, and are we meeting them or not meeting them? Because this whole management process kind of becomes haphazard, whoever I think the president is, because all of a sudden you start trying to figure out, okay, what are the 44 things that are going on? And I can understand why management also gets frustrated because, okay, which one of the 44 items is a priority for them?
And dovetailing on that with the level of service, if a call comes in on whatever, what your question was, what's the process in a timely way for responding to that request? The other piece dovetails with a question I raised a couple of meetings ago and then at the board meeting last week about, are we documenting, this is more specific to the website, but I think it goes global. Are we documenting the nature of the calls that are coming in? If we have one call on a chair lift at a pool, and then we have a second call, then a third call, and a fourth call, that says something different. So are we documenting the nature of the calls that are coming in? You know, noise from X or Y or whatever the issue is, whatever the issue. Are we documenting, and, you know, is it a solo request or is it 20 people?
I think the truth will be that we could do anything that we're willing to pay for. And so ultimately, this becomes a level of service review, right? How much are we willing to pay for? How many people do we want? How many people in the front office? How many people doing administrative and so on? And that's why I'm looking forward to those conversations, both in executive session and then publicly when we start to review the budget. I think one of the realities for me is that the first year going through the budget process is like trying to drink from a fire hose. It's just nearly impossible. I'm hopeful that a second time through, with a more experienced eye about what really matters and why decisions go a certain way, I think we wrote a good budget. I think we can write one that gets more to our expectations and makes decisions about, do you want to pay for that or not? How important is this really? We're in a community where people expect a lot. The question is, are we willing to pay for everything that we have to pay for in order to get that? Or is there a better, more efficient way to get it?
And so that we can control back porch communication right now. We have a working capital fund, which has 2 or 3 sources, and we have the operating fund. We have the ability as a board, it's one of our key abilities, to determine how much is going into a working capital fund, how much is going into the operating fund. And it may very well be that with the evolution of the athletic fields and other things and security needs and other things that go with it, that we need to move 100,000 from X to Y. So we're not increasing anybody's assessment, because I really don't want to read on the back porch they're talking about blowing my assessments through the ceiling. That is not the only lever we have. Last year we said we were inflation oriented, let's say another 2% bump just as part of the process, but we have other tools. The real issue to me is exactly this. What is the level of service and how are we getting there and how are we prioritizing the things that are going on? day-to-day. I mean, and if we think level of service is one that needs to be bumped up a whole lot more, and David makes a good argument in what he talked about there, then maybe it should be number 2. I think day-to-day has to be there, and number 2 may define what day-to-day should evolve to, but.
Yeah. And thanks for clarifying. I wasn't suggesting that we were going to raise assessments. I'm just simply saying.
Right.
I was just clarifying. I was taking Dave's communication.
Proactive, accurate.
I see my torso being dragged through Main Street already.
Okay, what are your thoughts?
I think generally speaking, I guess, part of, with the list, I think each board member has different perspectives of what the level of service on a day-to-day basis should be. For instance, David, you added communication,
Right.
proactive, inclusive, frequent, positive. That's part of that should be part of,
It should be.
that should be part of number 1.
Absolutely.
So when that's even what I put on my notes
Right.
is, I agree that is critical, but it should be part of, J, doing the day-to-day business of the town.
Right.
Because that should just be happening.
But
Whether it is or isn't, it's.
Yeah, certainly was an omission that needed higher attention than being buried.
Clarification.
That's all, that's all. Yeah.
Let's just start right there.
I think it's useful, I think maybe if we can just, as a board, kind of discuss where we're at, and then perhaps get some ideas for if we're missing something that the residents or owners
Okay.
believe are not on there that should be, much like what Laurel had addressed.
All right, I will go first. Since I developed a list. Doing the daily business of the day, I thought had to be number 1. I put athletic field completion, including the recreation community rules, as number 2. We've just spent $4.5 million. Yes. County agreement, you know, I think in a lot of ways it's in pretty good shape, but it's not across the finish line. I had 6 as the website launch on June 10th. I think that needs to be a success, and I think it would be a positive. Legal work, roofing projects, we just know they're all out there. Parks and Facility Plan Master Update, you know, a lot of people have a lot of needs. Every time I go play golf with the Celebrators, I get lobbied for 3 or 4 different things. So, you know, that communication vehicle matters. The reserve study is well underway, will probably be done in July, so I think that one will just fall by its side, but it's important. The sustainability review really, to me, leads to the whole potential for a request for proposal and other things we've talked about. In all honesty, I think, having read David's list last night, the level of service review was an omission on my part that I probably blew since we're starting it this week, and it should have been higher up, but that was my thought process. David, why don't you just go through yours, and then we'll let it be
Sure.
talk, and then we can merge thoughts.
Yes, and I concur, of course, with the first one, daily business of the town, and then I added, and we'll talk about that, the communications piece. I followed that with volunteer recognition approach, and it's really, with the multiple committees that we have, they've grown, and the charter committee is, charter review is a short-term one. That's a lot of volunteers, a lot of well-intended people who are breaking their back, and how do we really nurture that? We have 10,000 plus residents and probably what, 40, 50 regulars in volunteers at the upper level? And I wonder why that's the case, why there are not more and more opportunities, and I have some thoughts about that. So I made that number 3 because I really, that's a longer-term piece that I think can make a difference. Of course, the Parks and Facilities Master Plan update, we will see those results. I don't know timing, but we will see those, and then the board will be processing that. So I had that as 4th. Level of service review, 5th. 6th, I had athletic fields. 7th was sustainability UCF analysis. 8th was security enhancement, the whole safety and security issue. Legal work with roofing, it'd be nice to move that behind us, and then the website launch.
Jackson?
Which we want to be a success.
I agreed that the daily business was number 1. For me, number 2 was the legal work, the roofing projects, in part because of the actual specific legal work, but also because I think it's got implications longer term and precedent, so I think it's got some importance. Number 3 for me is charter review. Obviously, I think that's a long-term picture. Number 4, the athletic fields. for the same reason. It's a major asset, biggest asset we put into place. The UCF analysis, the sustainability study, I have at number 5. I have the Parks and Facilities Master Plan update at number 6, recognizing again long-term planning. Number 7, the county agreement for the fields. I'm hopeful that it'll go off our list entirely after tonight, but if not, I don't think it goes away. Number 8, I put down Island Village monitoring. Even though we have no actual hard power here, I think our need to stay informed and to continue to press for Island Village and the way that they function remains important. Number 9 for me, no surprise I suppose, condo associations and legal work. This would be around the community in the various condos we have and the various pieces of litigation, but also just the work that they're doing within the condos. And then number 10 would be the strategic plan assistance that CCMC came to us last year. I think that the plan that was presented to us has a great deal of validity, and I want to make sure we don't lose sight of that.
That's a good point.
Vanessa or Vaughn?
I have mine or.
I didn't put it up here, Vanessa. I thought it was Jackson, so
Oh,
you
no.
tell me, I'll put it up here.
Okay. I have my number 1 as doing the daily business, so J. But again, that coordinates, I think, I coordinated my number 1 was also the communication. I believe that that's something that we need to be doing on a day-to-day basis.
All right, 1 second. Communication, II, Susan, down at the bottom.
Yeah. You can blend my II with the number 1 also. My number 2 is the athletic fields. Again, that's a huge financial expense that we've had. We need to make sure we're making wise decisions on that. My number 3 was charter review. That's fortunately should be coming to an end and can be replaced by next year. Number 4, I had security enhancements, which is BB, but I also think that C is part of 4. I think part of the security enhancements should be how are we using our cameras. So I combined those 2.
You combined which 2, sorry?
Cameras.
C
So
and
basically, you just chose
BB.
12.
Basically.
She solved the bond problem.
But I think it's good.
Because we're being past president. That's one of the-
We've learned that when you have a woman on the board that they.
I'll do whatever I want. Number 5 is Parks and Facility Master Plan update, and I think that falls in line with, we've done a fair amount of work on that. I think we need to follow through.
Yeah,
And-
up 1. Oh, you got it. Okay, sorry. Yep, you're right.
Right?
I have it right, yes.
Yes. Number 6, I have P, Hurricane Preparedness Review. And I would like to put it up higher because June 1st was our beginning of the hurricane season. I think that if we haven't already implemented anything, that we're behind the 8 ball, but my perception is, based on past, is that we already have something in plan, so rest
It
assured.
has been updated, so just so everyone knows, it
Thank
has
you.
been
I
updated.
figured it would
Every
be.
year it's updated.
Number 7, I have our legal work, V, with roofing projects. Number 8, I have HH website. Number 9, I have property tax refund availability for the last 3 years. I think that's part of our fiduciary responsibility, is if we can save money or get more money, I think that needs to be in our top 10.
What was number 9, sorry?
Number 9 is Y.
Why?
And number 10 is the seller service use process utility, so F. And I did that only because it's something that seems to, we can use it to our advantage, and I think that could actually link up with number 1 very well if we do it right. And again, that's not to say that anything else that's on here isn't important, those are the ones, as of right now, I believe are important.
Vaughn?
Well, I really had a lot of trouble with organizing my priorities here, because what I said before, I looked more at long-term than I did immediate. That's why you don't see any of my numbers, you know, under weathermatic, because we're going to do it. I know, you know, we're going to do a lot of this stuff. We're going to do the weathermatic, what are some of the others here? The website we're going to do, we're going to do it, and it's already just about done. I looked more towards how is the board operating, how are we governing, how are we working with CCMC, what do we need to improve? So that's really how I went with my categories. Legal, I put in there as an 8, because as far as that goes, I mean, legal's just proceeding as it proceeds. I mean, we're kind of going on the advice of the lawyers, from what I understand. So I made it number 8 because it's important, but I don't know how much influence we have on that one way or another, except ultimately to make a decision. So I put it in there, but I don't know if it's something that we really have to immediately focus on. It's just going to happen, and we're going to make a decision on what we want to do, and then it's going to proceed through whatever path it takes. So my number 1 was charter review. I just felt that's very important. That was a long-term goal. I thought, the reason I picked number 2 is the cameras at the Pools athletic fields, is because I thought it was kind of important, because we have a lot of incidents going on, and I think we need to protect ourselves and know what's going on security-wise, safety-wise in these pool areas. So I just thought that was an immediate thing that we needed to take care of. So I kind of stepped out of my comfort zone there and went with some immediate resolution. Financial metrics, I think we need to look where the town's going money-wise. We'll have to see what the county does this evening. We don't know, maybe they'll table it. I don't know. This may just get drug on and on. But I think financially, we have to look at what money the town has in one scenario and what it's going to have in another scenario, and then based on that, after we get our surveys back, or statistical surveys, and we can decide see what the community wants, and then see if we have the money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I put that kind of high. Number 4, level of service review. I think we just, we've already talked about that. Level of service from CCMC and level of service that we have towards the community. Are we doing our job there? 5, community standards, compliance, and process analysis. Do we need to review that to see how, if there's equality and how we're applying the rules to everyone in town? 6, athletic fields, of course, we want to get that, and that is a big important financial thing for us. Number 7, Island Village monitoring. I think there are a lot of factors in there that we have to look at. How are we going to tie Island Village into our amenities and events here? How are we going to make them feel inclusive there? What kind of staffing are we going to need for Island Village? What kind of staff increases are we going to need as far as the inspectors? Are we going to have to add 1, maybe 2 inspectors? Are we going to have to add vehicles to accommodate those people to travel to Island Village? I think that's a big factor. Legal work, I put number 8. You have to monitor it, but I think we've done pretty well with that already. So 9, sustainability review. I'm really looking forward to see what UCF comes up with on that analysis, to see what kind of changes. That kind of ties in with some of the other things, level of service that CCMC is providing. Number 10, I think number 10 and my number 10 and my number 9 are kind of combined. And so what I did was, just quickly here, I just kind of made some categories I thought would help me decide. I made 5 categories. I called 1 financial, 1 government, 1 legal, amenities, and security. And then I went down with the list that we have here, and I put the letters under each category. Then I was thinking, well, maybe we could I could prioritize under each category what I felt was important. Maybe one category may not have anything in the top 10. I don't know, but maybe government would have 4. But most of them fell under government from what I can see, and amenities. A couple, 3 under financial, so that's how I looked at it. I would have to look at it again. I'm not really happy with the way my numbers came out because I really just had trouble categorizing everything as immediately important or down the road something we really need to work on.
Go up to row M, Susan.
That means I've lost, it'll take a minute.
Okay.
Oh, there it came back.
Financial
It
metrics.
wasn't near as bad as.
Yeah, under go up to row M and insert the row. And don't put a letter for now, just put financial metrics / CROA. Financial metrics regarding CCMC sustainability long-term. Based upon the visit I made out there last fall, in our contract, we rely on CCMC a lot. And one of the questions that came up was, is CCMC financially strong? We're allowed to ask that question. We haven't done all of the follow-through, which really kind of hits on me. I just haven't followed through with it as much as I should. So to me, that's a different item than financial metrics / CROA, which is what Vaughn was talking about. So that's why I'm breaking it in 2, so to avoid any confusion there. We have 5 people in the audience. All 5 of you come to a lot of meetings. All 5 of you know CROA and the town very well. Would you like to add comments? We certainly would welcome them from any of you.
But hey, no pressure.
Well, the answer can be no, I don't care, but I'm opening it up if someone wants to talk, as long as you want to come forward.
Too late.
She charges me. Mike Jackson, 413 Sycamore. I'm not sure where to start. You know, sitting here listening, so I'm not sure
Welcome to the club.
how to organize this. I want to comment on Vaughn's discussion. But let me put one out there first. One that I think is missing from the list is our relationship with Lexington and the downtown. I know everybody will say, well, that's not our job, but so goes that, so goes our community. So I think we've got to figure that out. And obviously, there's things that are pending, whether it's the Stetson building, it's the theater, it's the empty space on Market Street right now. I mean, there's a lot of activity, the repair that's being attempted. So I think that's one you've got to think about in your top 10. The other thing, from Vaughn's comments about long-term, short-term, whatever it is, I do think you need to bucket them in probably 2 buckets. And
How many buckets, sorry?
2.
Long-term, short-term.
Yeah, I don't know if I do long-term, short-term, but that's one way to think about it, tactical versus strategic. In the past, as I've worked in organizations and the nonprofits I work with now, I talk about working in the business and working on the business. And I think Jackson and I had that discussion at one point, months back and so on. So I think we think about the things you've got to do in the business, to keep the lights on, to keep the trains running on time, all of that. Those are those tactical things. That's not your number 1, your daily things you need to get done. So I think you got a lot of those that you're going to put in there in the bucket, and you're going to be able to tick them off pretty quick, because you're going to be more short-term orientated. They're going to be more a requirement of the business and so on. Then I think you get to working on the business. Okay, how do you enhance what you have? You don't spend all your time working in the business. You spend some time working on the business to become more strategic. The enhancement, how do you add to, how do you improve what you already have? So I think that's a group that has much more long-term, strategic, evolutionary, more difficult things to get done and get closure with. You can think about closure, you know, as a near-term, short-term, whatever. So I applaud the effort in trying to sort it out. I think it's got to be done, but as you can tell, it's a wrestling match of trying to.
I'd like to have a conversation. And I welcome others from the audience to join it. One of the comments you made there that I struggle with, and I realize this whole conversation is struggling right now as we try to think through this, but I don't think ignoring the issue helps. You talked about almost in the business, which I'll consider almost like daily business and in strategic. I think that at the end of the day, the board should be strategic. I worry, and I would like to look for heads nodding yes or no. My biggest fear is, as a board member, is I see myself and others up here getting sucked into, should the dispenser cups be blue or red? And that's a silly analogy intentionally, but we could literally spend 40 hours a week on minutia. And at the end of the day, CCMC is hired for minutia. And I hadn't thought about the way Laurel started it before. I had thought about the level of service stuff, which we have the meeting coming up on. And it's almost, to me, like we need to define, here's level of service stuff, which should be CCM's job, and we, as a community and a board, should really define what is the level of service we want. I don't, having been through one budget cycle, I don't think we do level of service well at all. I think we did horribly, to be honest with you. It's a budgeting process. We've all been through budgeting in many things, and a budget should deal at 15,000 feet. I would like us to have a document which is 22 pages long that says, as we referred to earlier, this is the level of service we expect from CCMC. And that's not a shot at CCMC. We as a town that's been around for 20 years should know we expect to return phone calls in X days, and we expect vacant properties to be handled like this and this and this. And then what are the strategic type items? So it's almost to me like, and this is really a question for you, Mike, it's almost like we could have strategic items on here and items that management should get to. Is that a fair synopsis or not a fair
Yeah,
synopsis?
I think it is. I really think it is, because that's what a board should be doing. But you need to provide the oversight and the accountability to get that done. I think you're missing that part of it right now. I don't think you're as effective as you need to be, hence all the questions and comments about the slips and the misses and the oversights and whatever it is. Anytime when you're in a leadership role, you're gonna struggle with how much time do you spend on the minutia and how much time do you spend on strategic things. That's an ongoing battle. You're never gonna absolve yourself of it totally. You're gonna spend a certain percentage of your time, but I think you have to be self-aware and evaluate how you're doing as a board. You know, are we spending 60% of our time on strategic and 40% on tactical or whatever it is? But I think the way you get yourself out of that trap is to hold management accountable to execute on those things. And you're providing the oversight. So yeah, we're on the same page, I think. I'm saying the same thing. Because they're gonna be dealing with the day-to-day, keeping the trains on time, making sure the lifeguard's at the stand and whatever thing there is there. Someone's just gotta be making sure those things are happening, okay? And then when they don't happen, then it sucks you in. That's when turmoil starts.
Yeah, I go back to something that David said to us 2 years ago, which was that rather than trying to fix things on a one-off basis, you tried to find the process that would manage it on an ongoing basis. And I think that that balance is probably the thing that we struggle with the most on a day-to-day basis is, do we need to respond to this individually or as a board, or do we have a bigger systemic question to answer? And you know, I feel like that's always it's a moving target, right? You're never quite sure where to be on that. But the more that we've got those priorities in place, the easier it is for management to do their job.
And then the other thing that's really difficult along these lines is, and it's where the charter review will be, gets more and more interesting, is board dynamics change. I mean, I've heard of boards that I weren't on in old years that wanted to micromanage pencil acquisitions, and almost seriously. And when you get to that level of service, God help you, how does management even have a prayer? You know, defining, it would almost be interesting in our charter review, and thinking out loud here, Gary, you know, what is management's responsibility versus what is the board's responsibility as part of the charter, even thinking about it and helping set parameters might be an interesting thing to think about.
I think Vanessa had a good point. She made a point about what Mike's, I think it follows from what Mike said, where the more we delve into all this minutia that we're talking about, that things that we should leave to CCMC, these workshops become more frequent and longer in periods of time, and it's probably a natural result of us sticking our opinions and noses into things that we should be leaving the management to handle, and we should be sticking more with the strategic aspects of running the town rather than the day-to-day operations. We talked about this, I don't know if it was at the after the last election or the one before that, Vanessa's been on the board a long time, and she even, I think you commented that you've noticed a difference in the amount of workshops that are occurring, and every time something little comes up, we talk, well, let's do a workshop on it, but I don't know if these are all really, David, you've been on the board quite a while too, so.
Yeah, we doubled the workshops a year ago.
Well, I think it's just important, I think more specifically, my point was that when we're talking about level of service, we have to recognize that we have a finite number of staff. And the amount of workshops used to be occasionally when I was on the board. But basically, the management was responsible for having information for one meeting a month. That was it. So now the board has now just added 3 times the work, because now you've got 2 more workshops every month that the board and the public is expecting that the information's out. So we have not increased our level of staffing, and yet we have increased our meetings 2 more times. So we just need to, I'm not saying we shouldn't have the workshops, I'm just saying that as a board, you need to recognize that by doing that, you've also increased the effort of the staff.
Laurel Russo, 709 Bloom. I'll make one quick follow-up question to that, point to that. I think even when I was bringing up the lakeside pool, I would see that as a CCMC thing. I'm assuming there's a set contract that says what hours, and so it does feel like it's a bore to have to waste your time and bring it here or whatever. I need to get better with cell service, et cetera, but again, I'll try to sort of step that up, but that would be my one comment. I definitely agree. There's certain things that are just contractual. Are you fulfilling that contract, or aren't you? And then what to do about that. Respectfully, I'd like to actually, also was not on my thing, I want to ask something or mention my input on security, but to correct respectfully Mike's point on relationship with Lexan, I'd like to just ask that Lexan be substituted with Town Center Foundation, because Town Center Foundation, as a homeowners association downtown, talking about just Lexan is a little bit like talking about your homeowners association and only citing the board who's in control, right? Who's in primary control. But ignoring sort of all the members that are part of CROA who also have a voice, whether we're kind of minority members, not really, we're not serving on the board, we're equal, but we're not serving on the board. So the Town Center Foundation is who you need to improve your relationship with, in my opinion, not Lexan. Giving Lexan all of the power as the owner of the buildings is short-sighted when we've won a battle that states we're a homeowners association and there are now members and people that are involved. Turnover hasn't happened, we haven't gained control on their board as of this date and time, which would certainly make that communication and that shift easier. But I would argue that they are not the sole controlling entity of the foundation, and we will continue to battle that. And so therefore, for, I think, the most constructive move forward in this conversation, speaking of them as the Town Center Foundation for the relationship is relevant in my opinion. That would just be one thing I would add. Security, I wanted to jump back to, because I noticed on one of your points, you mentioned CCDD on the camera thing, perhaps a joint conversation or what have you. And I've also been religiously attending the CCDD meetings, and they had a really revealing workshop last month that there wasn't a CROA member at, so I would encourage whoever's the liaison to go and read that.
We have
report.
3 of them, it just, yeah.
What's that?
We have 3 liaisons, just none of them were there.
Exactly, and that's fine, yeah, and that, no comment, I don't have any issue with that, but please go back and read it, and it's one of the things that I actually was gonna post on the back porch some information on, but I would like to, under the heading of communication and starting to ease this community into the conversation, because I'm amazed at how much I didn't know until they brought in the police captain and, the police officers, and I mean, they had I think 3 or 4 representatives there, and speaking to the challenges of what's going on, in terms of we have 1 officer, do we need more, where is he placed, what are our 2 zones in town, and one of the things you find out is, of course, we have a lower crime rate here in Celebration. When there's, a massive call, our guys pulled, how much are we willing to pay for that? I think that comes into, it needs to be a more holistic conversation between the 2 entities, because I could see us spending X amount on cameras under your entity, and then coming over, and if you don't have sort of some police presence and maybe more of that, and I'm a little confused, and maybe I'm misinformed at the moment as to why we're not spending more as a community on that. I mean, we now have a sidewalk cleaner, but I would have rather have another officer in town, or I know we're not paying Jerry's full salary. There are a lot of little nuances I'm trying to come up to speed on, but I don't know if there should ever be a meeting that is solely an evening meeting on safety for our community, so that both CCDD and CROA could speak to what they can and can't do. I know Lee Moore's brought up a lot on cameras, and there's a lot of legality, and their lawyer usually speaks to that. These are all things that's very hard, I think, to engage the average public, kind of going to your conversation of why aren't more people volunteering, coming to these meetings, what is your resource and your ability to do so, but one evening one that's really billed as a safety conversation feels really bad, because we all have a lot of complaints about running through stop signs and how many bikes are being stolen and how many houses are being broken into, and the lakeside or the basketball issue, and part of those will be solved by cameras, but part of them is also a presence, and how do we do that, and how do we engage the community so that we sort of lower the bickering and increase the solutions would be. So maybe something collaborative, I don't know if that's possible.
Can I make, oh, go ahead.
I just want to, I would just want to emphasize that item U on the list, which was legal matters and condo associations. Laurel, the way that I read that was to include TCF. I think the point is exactly right. It's TCF, not Lexington.
Yeah.
But I think if we had someone here from Artisan Park Condo Association, they would tell you that their legal battles are every bit as important and dramatic to them. The folks at Georgetown would tell us their situation. I think when we recognize the number of residents in this community that live in condominiums, whether they're downtown or Artisan or North Village or wherever it might be, it's a substantial number. It's over 35% of our residents. And so, to me, the priority level is that we have to deal with condos in their whole, without necessarily singling out a specific condo association or a specific piece of litigation. And so while I respect the effort, my hope is that we would not be dragged into a specific fight between any condo and any developer, builder, owner as a priority. We want to be aware of it. I suspect we'll see some things with Island Village, but I don't know that we necessarily want to be dragged into them.
Well, I added, based on what Laurel said, David already put a category in here called communication, and I was thinking we could add all associations, not just Town Center, but also add Artisan Park and the condo associations, but associations, CCDD, TCC, CROA, CJC, Orange County Sheriff's Office, and the county, just put them under another category, just so we don't miss anybody.
You know, the reality is that we're a town of 10,000 plus, growing, with, I'm told, 750,000 visitors a year. It's a big job. It's a big job. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. I think the idea of a safety meeting is a great idea, bringing together all the different entities. But we could probably do that under 5 or 6 different topics and have those kinds of gatherings.
The only,
Yeah,
the only-
definitely, I do agree. Nothing, I think, specific to the legal stuff. I just think that the clarification of meeting with Town Center Foundation
Yeah, I
and
think that's a
having
good
it
one.
billed as that is a good start, and just changing the language and the impression of the language is great. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. We've had 2 or 3 comments here. Let me drift a little on 2 or 3 of them. We talked about the number of workshops versus the board meeting. My experience is the board meetings, the agenda is really set by CCMC. At the end of the day, we have 20, 30 action items. We have some brief updates. We're running like banshees. We do our 2 hours, we leave, and we have no conversation at all. So we really started getting into this, let's do workshops, because we're doing what we're doing here. You know, this we've been going for 45, 50 minutes here. It's been a little bit of a ramble, but hopefully it's been informative, and at least we start to formulate thoughts and stuff like that. It works much better than email. You know, on TCF in the downtown, I agree it should go on there. It's an interesting thing. As soon as you become a new board member, in your first indoctrination meeting, they tell you can't do anything with Lexington or TCF or anything like that. It has evolved. There has been decisions. There's things that we're all educated on, not as well as Laurel and a small team, but at the end of the day, should we talk more about it? Yeah, we have, you know, Where I struggle the most with TCF and Lexington and the whole downtown area is it has got so personal between so many people that it becomes emotional in about 30 seconds, regardless of the topic. So that's where it's hard, but it should be there, I agree. Security, I think, working with CCD would be interesting. Their meetings are fascinating. I don't know where that would go. But that's one to add there. So, okay, we've done this for 50 minutes. Should we, let me just bounce an idea. Should I take and watch this more comfortably, have Susan send me a copy of that, kind of do a weighted average, kind of almost do something for the board that says this is kind of what we heard, and bounce it around a little so there can be a conversation, so we almost re-workshop it again. I don't think we're ready to vote on a darn thing. We've spent time kind of getting ourselves to the point where, okay, we've shared thoughts and ideas. I think Vaughn's idea of putting it into categories or Mike's or wherever we end up there is a good one.
I can send those out. I'll type it up and I'll put the letters under the categories, and feel free. I have no pride in authorship here, so feel free to switch it around, but just as a starting point maybe.
It would start with some prioritization, because it's easy to take the 5 we've done, it's easy to do a weighted average and kind of say, this is where it seems to be evolving, here's some banding, here's some notes, this is kind of where we're going, because does everybody agree there's value in workshopping? And it's not going to take 50 minutes every workshop. Once we kind of get it done, it's going to be there.
It keeps it on our radar, which it's a good discussion.
Okay.
Do we want to make sure, Gary, did you have anything else you wanted to add to it?
You're good. The charter's going to solve it all. Motion approved. All right, let's go to some updates. Cameras. Where do we stand on our camera update? Whoever the right person is to brief us on that.
Patrick and Todd have information on that.
Okay.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Morning, Patrick.
As far as Spring Park, we'll start with Spring Park first, because that's what kind of brought a lot of this up to light. Spring Park, Todd, Tim, and myself went out last week to Spring Park, and we did an audit, and we did get some adjustments in. Really got down to where the holes were, and we took care of that. We did identify one camera that will want to rewire just to get a different camera out there. But other than that, Spring Park has been addressed. We will, over the next couple of weeks, just address each individual location. But for the most part, we're looking at trying to get an upgrade for the whole town. And this was previously discussed. We do have some funds in reserves to take care of that, but we're looking at a more robust application, something that we're able to, number one, view remotely, make adjustments on the fly, take a look at some more streamlined reporting and taking a look at where events are happening more frequently, and that way we can be more, in tune with where the changes need to happen. Some of the software that we have now in place, we've had it for a little over 8 years, and the Department of Defense actually said, no more Chinese manufacturing of equipment, so it has to go at some point anyway. That's what we're taking a look at right now.
What's a realistic time frame?
For
The whole, the evaluation of what we need to upgrade to where we probably need to be. I mean, is it 2 weeks, is it 2 months? I mean, just what's realistic? That's all I'm
I would
asking.
say over the next month, over this month of June and into July, I should have a third bid and take a look at which one we're going to come back to the board with the information on.
So is the upgrade about replacing existing cameras, or also include an audit of where we have potential?
You were gone, but in the workshop before this where we discussed it, and correct me if my errors are, what they really said was, we don't want to fix obsolete stuff.
Right.
So we really want to look in today's day and age, it's like your iPhone didn't exist 10 years ago,
Not the flip phone anymore.
So let's get something that new technology-wise allows us to be in really good shape, and then we'll have a shelf life that goes.
But how about areas that are not currently covered?
we wanted to expand.
So
Yes.
that, are we also, as part of this month and a half assessment, looking at areas that are currently not covered?
Well, I think
Is that
what
part of the
we do
audit?
is provide you a map of different facilities, kind of give you an angle, camera angle of what is visible now and what isn't. And that'll give you an idea of the areas we're looking at, so if you want to
Okay.
expand upon that.
To be clear, I thought we had said we were looking at the athletic fields, we were looking at the
Yes.
pools, we're looking at the playgrounds. I mean, in this day and age, you sue first and then you get the facts later. So, I mean, I realize cameras are reactive and they're not proactive, but, we need, the instruction here is to get a recommendation on a good, thorough thing so we can sit here and say we've thought through it.
And Patrick, you can comment on this, but you guys have looked at other CCMC communities and what they've used, cloud-based camera system.
So as you're getting bids, I'm thinking about the cart and the horse. What's the larger picture, because there are areas that are currently not covered, is that going to be part of the bid?
Yes.
So the bid
Well,
was...
my understanding, we've asked for a thorough, complete, I mean, that
So
board
here's the maximum, it might be 100 cameras
Right. So
in 20 locations.
they're coupled together. In doing the audit, we're identifying any holes,
Okay.
anywhere that needs to have some coverage. But we're not looking at upgrading it at that moment until we upgrade the whole system. So
I understand.
the whole,
Right.
we're just identifying it, and then when
So-
it comes to updating and upgrading the whole community, all of our facilities,
So-
that's when that
So
location.
there's an upgrade and an expansion potential.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Lon? Yeah.
You mentioned the cloud. What's the storage capacity for these cameras? How long will we be able to go back and retrieve things? If someone comes up with a complaint, says this happened at Spring Lake Pool, Spring Park Pool, how far can we go back?
Currently,
Well, and what you're proposing to do?
that all depends on what we're willing to spend as far as the storage capacity. But with going with some of these.
Are we going to get that in our bids? I mean, can we get
It'll
that in
all
our
be-
bids?
It'll all be defined, but initially, we were looking at minimum 30 days, minimum of 1 month. They can go how we need.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd say a maximum.
2 years.
But for the sake of clarity, while the board members are all here, we're not asking you to give us a low bid. We're asking you to give us a good, high-quality product that will meet, let's spend enough money that we do it right this time versus sitting here 2 years from now saying, well, we bought the Kmart special and now we need to replace it. So let's do it once right. Let's
Like
get
anything
broad
else.
coverage, let's get good capacity, let's get,
Just like anything. else,
Everybody
we'll come
agree?
back with
Yes.
the best-
Yes.
The best recommendation, not based on the price.
okay. Any other questions for Patrick on this one?
No.
Everybody agrees with the directive?
Yes.
All right, website.
Website, we're still shooting for that June 10th rollout. We currently just been working over the weekend with the developer as well, and every day this week, and we do have a plan to get that rolled out. We have been going over the website with our front desk staff, trying to get them familiar, make sure that they can reiterate some of that information for anyone that calls in. We have a plan in place for just when those residents do call in and say, hey, where is this or how to do that, they have that answer. We've been working with someone that you recommended last week. I forgot her name.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Betty, yeah.
Right. We did reach out to her, and JR and I are working on a frequently asked questions page to get that rolled out as well. We started social media posting, so you should have seen some things on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Some of the Friday Flash.
Flash as well. So, we're getting the word out. Sunday night, we are looking at doing what they call pretty much a maintenance mode, making the website go to a maintenance mode, and essentially what you'll receive is a message that says it's just unavailable right now as they do all the technical stuff, which is switching over DNS servers and all the stuff that we don't really care about right now, besides making sure that website is fully operational for June 10th.
Okay.
So you'll change the DNS overnight, is that it?
Correct, and the way that happens, it can take, it can be as quickly
Just takes some time to
as,
roll.
15 minutes, sometimes it can take up to 2 hours, so, that's not up to any one person, that's up to hosting sites.
You got-
I'll turn it over, I'll turn it to David in one second. I know he's got a couple of questions for the audience and people online. Know Betty is actually an HR professional who had done website updates for 20 and 30,000 people organizations, and she was at our board meeting and followed up afterwards and said, I'd like to really help and look at things and talk to people about lessons learned. So that's the value of completely doing these things over and over again. We found value in that. David?
Just two things. One is a follow-up to what you just said. Will there be announcements in the week to come that says the website will be down between, or starting at whatever on Sunday?
I do need to speak with JR on that. I only received that information on
But
Saturday, so.
Advance notice that says it will be down starting Sunday at 6, or Sunday at 9, or Sunday at whatever.
Right.
Okay.
I wanted to make you guys aware of that.
Yeah, that's important to know. But the other is, I just got the link, I was traveling again last week, and just got the link, and I only looked at it here and did not find, I only found it on the small device and did not see the functionality that we had looked at. It may be because when you're looking at a tablet, it's different than the laptop, but I'll look at it, I'm sorry, yeah, looking at it on a full screen. But I'll look at that in more detail, because some of the things we had talked about last month did not appear here. And I do not see committee meetings at all on the website, and we talked about that.
Right. But there is a committees tab and we're working on it.
There's a committee tab, but there's no meetings. I don't know when the covenants meeting is.
Right, we have all of this week to.
So it's not a functional site to review yet. I thought that's what we were going to be looking at, is a ready-to-go site. Anyway, to me, it's not there, at least it's not on the tablet.
Right, so there are things that the developer is responsible for, and then the rest is staff. And so as the developer has made the sections and formulated everything for that, we'll go in and we'll populate a number of things.
So I thought that the test was that the there is already there, and for me, the there isn't there yet. And we're going live in a week.
Said notes.
It makes me nervous.
Okay.
That's where I sit this morning.
So just to clarify then, Patrick, you expect this week that you will be putting in the community notices, all of the committee meetings, so that when we run live a week from today, it will be fully populated?
Right.
Okay.
And when it goes live on June 10th, and there are comments left and right, which there will be for a few days as people test a thing, we're all ready to mobilize resources here for a day or two if we have to put in committee meetings, if we have to do this, that. It's high priority.
Yes.
Okay, because Steve's gone, so I mean.
We understand that completely. We learned our lesson last time around, so this time we're prepared.
I will say, one of the things I like is that this site is mobile friendly.
Yeah.
The prior site was mobile agnostic.
Challenge.
So it's really nice to be able to see this and work on a tablet or on a phone. I think the basic framework is right. I think it's going to be a huge upgrade. I do think there's more migration and inputting that's going to mean for a very long week for you guys. So I'm glad we went back to the 10th. I appreciate also the email that you sent saying here's where you are. I know you've got a lot going on this week and a lot to do. It would be helpful, I think, for us not to get in the weeds, but just to understand what's happening for a periodic update from you or Susan or somebody or JR, just to say, here's where we're at, here's the next big thing that's happening. It would make me rest a little easier leading up to Monday to know that these steps are being finished and that you're saying that one's in the books, that's checked. Not all the small details, but the big steps that you know have to happen.
So basically, let's just say an end-of-day email every day this week. It kind of says, there's 11 items, these 3 are gone, these 3 are gone.
That's a
So
good way
it's
to
just
put it.
kind of like we're ready to launch. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
A bullet type thing, as opposed to an exhaustive thing. Fair enough, Susan?
Fair enough.
Okay, next item.
Thank you very much.
Athletic field, Duke Energy. Who's, that you?
That's me.
Mr. Duke.
Yeah. I was
Not
given
today.
the meter installed by now. We're still waiting on the electric meter. Duke Energy has until Wednesday for their deadline to get that installed. I spoke with the contractor this morning on site, and they felt that Duke would be there today. Been checking my phone, and as they have not arrived. So based on that, Armco has set their substantial completion date at June 25th. What that means is during that time, they'll have to do lift station startup. There's some interior things that haven't been accomplished because we need power for the ACs to run so they can hang wooden doors and things like that. And then they have to do HVA and electrical startups. So after that point, after the 25th, that's when we would look at the little punch list items. You'll see the blue tape going around, and but substantial means substantial. It's almost there.
Would that also include the quality of the turf on the field that's still having trouble?
No, that date would probably go past that, because, update on that, Jacob from New Leaf, as you know, he approved his contract. He was out there last week, going through the irrigation system, started his work on the turf. We marked out some areas, about 50% of the first field, we marked as needing replaced. So the contractor is getting the sod lined up for that. And the program that we signed with Jacob addresses that new sod and that grow-in period as well. So we're safe there. Field 2 is in really great shape. So that one would be playable. You know, Steve had talked about, waiting for the soft opening.
The hard opening.
The hard opening in fall, August. So we're still on target for that.
What was our agreement on replacing the sod wax with them as far as it not taking their?
Well, the agreement was we'd have to do acceptance, and we did not accept that sod. So we say, yeah, it looks good, they'll have to keep working at it.
So we'd have to sign off on something?
We do, yeah.
And we're using the current state of irrigation, not anything upgraded, not Weathermatic or anything else. We're just going to go with what we've got.
The system that was installed is Rainbird ESP. It is standalone, meaning it's not integrated with the CDD's MaxiCom system. So it has some functions, not as much as Weathermatic would, but it has its own little rain gauge and not quite the whole weather system as the Weathermatic would. So it is functioning right now off of batteries because we have no power there. So yeah, that's each valve has a battery pack on it to keep it watered. So as soon as that meter goes in, they'll change all those out, and then it'll be right off the irrigation control system.
So you talked about a June 25th completion, not about that one field. This will go back to Patrick's, the point with Patrick and the security cameras. For now, we have nothing.
Correct.
And so once you and Patrick finish that proposal, that would include the athletic fields, what would be the timing for potential installation there? When might we begin to have coverage there?
I think you got to have the ultimate
That's a
solution.
tough one to answer.
And if we don't have a more formalized system, can we have something on a temporary basis?
Yeah.
Even piecemeal, something piecemeal, once we have power, something that's in the old system, can,
But it'll also be locked. It's not going to be open.
Right.
understand, but,
Fences can be crawled.
yeah,
No, I understand.
I'm just,
Yes.
I don't want to go a year and have no coverage.
We're looking, 35, 40 days, Patrick, once we make a decision.
Once we make a decision, you have a proposal, then we make a decision.
Correct.
I'm thinking that we're not going to want to get to hard open without being,
We want the cameras before the hard open.
No, we have the hard open.
I'm thinking
I think so.
35, 40 days. I'm thinking it's workshop because it's important enough. We
Yeah.
should talk about it and people should be able to see us do it.
Absolutely.
And then it probably gets approved at a board meeting, which I'm hoping is late July, and then
Yeah.
you need,
That would be a good
It
target.
needs to be sooner than that. If our target open is mid-August,
Right.
if our target is mid-August, going backwards, if it's going to take 30 to 40 days, you're talking about sooner than our July meeting.
So we need something for the next workshop.
Well, and maybe even we have a special meeting as soon as we have that, and we have a special
Yeah.
workshop, and
Just on
that's,
that.
it's all about cameras.
and maybe we have,
That's right.
once we make the decision, maybe they prioritize the athletic field first.
Yeah.
Or we have that flexibility.
Yeah.
It's an important item. Fair enough?
Can I just ask a quick clarification? You said that Duke Energy was supposed to have it by Wednesday, but hoping today. Now, there are no ramifications at all if they don't come Wednesday, other than we have to wait longer, correct? Okay.
They were supposed to have.
Just when you said when they were, the deadline, or they had agreed to come on Wednesday. I
Just so
exactly. I'm like,
just
we
so
have
you
no-
fully understand.
We have no, we have,
We have less than 12
Duke
hours.
Energy started
Good
promising to
power.
deliver stuff in August of 2018, so
Yes, yeah.
if anybody's got any power with Duke, God bless you.
Yeah.
They keep
Please.
resetting their calendar by different events, such as, you know, making the transformer live and then feeding it with power, blah, blah, blah. So they're good at that.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Charter.
Charter, we've had 2 charter meetings, official meetings, and we've had 3 workshops, working groups already. The dates for the upcoming one are posted on our notices in our website, community website. We had a couple of glitches on dates with the one that went out, was it the Flash? But it is, on our website, it is correct. So the first meeting we have for the working group is June the 6th at 5 p.m. The meetings will be floating, or the working groups, I should clarify this. The working groups will be floating based upon room availability. So it's very possible that we'll actually have our working groups in one of the smaller conference rooms rather than here. However, that we have the next 2 actual task force meetings scheduled. The first one will be June 12th at 6 p.m., and then the second one is June 25th at 6 p.m. Both of those will be here and will be recorded. The working groups, again, will not be recorded, but any decisions or suggestions that come from the working groups will be discussed in full during our task groups. So that there won't be any information that is discussed outside of the public arena. We strongly encourage participation, especially in the working groups, because that's where the meat and potatoes get discussed. The most of the people that have been attending those are people that are already on the task force. So we would like to get some additional owners coming in and participating in the process too, and a minimum of emailing, please.
Okay. One other update that wasn't on the agenda, but I'd just like to do real quick. In our emails, we had traded, and this may be a JR item, we've been doing the security down at Lakeside, and there was supposed to be daily updates. I mean, Vaughn's our point person, it'd be good if he could get updates, and where do we stand with getting those updates, and maybe we could just talk about that for a second.
Well, I heard Steve have a conversation with Share Group on Thursday, I believe, asking them that he wanted a daily any incidents, anything that is major that happens. And I don't know if he's gotten that. Have you gotten anything, JR?
Starting on Thursday, I get them when they go off shift.
So they're giving him to us on Thursday, every night when they go off shift.
On law enforcement, you know, when you're out there, every time you stop and talk to somebody,
Right.
you log it, you document it. I went to the basketball court, spoke with kids, blah, blah, and just indicate what happened, or I was down at the circle at the end, they log everything. And I would think that security should be able to do the same thing and hand you a log sheet saying, you know, show if they spoke to people. And
Here's what I did.
why
Here's what I did.
and what was done.
Based upon.
That's my thought.
Based upon Vaughn's background in policing and legal and everything, can we have Vaughn in the daily distribution? Or you can PDF and send him a copy or something, so at least he sees what's going on. If it's all right with the rest of the board, Vaughn's our
Yeah.
point person on
You could
this.
just go to the whole board.
I don't
You all
care.
want
But I'm happy with it going to you. And
You don't want it?
No.
Oh,
I'm happy with it going to Vaughn. You don't actually know what he's looking at.
I'll trade you the charter source emails for it.
What I care most about is let's get it in Vaughn's hands, and then anybody else who wants it, great, they can have it.
And if there's anything of any substance, then notify the board.
I think that's fair.
I was gonna say, I don't think anything is
I'll send the first one out so you can just get an idea of what kind of reporting's being done, and maybe you'd like to see more or less.
Yeah.
That way,
Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, next agenda item, because we got 35 minutes to go. I'd like to talk about cell service. I don't know who the point person is from CCMC, but kind of what I'd like to do here is really get us all an updated, again, on what cell service, and I have done a very poor job as a board member really staying on top of it, so I've re-updated all on my phone and my iPad and everywhere. The issue came up like when we had the power failure go down, it was on the back page, there was no notifications on cell service. We can all talk about level of service, and we talked about all that earlier. What I'd really like is an education for the board on cell service. We talked a little at the last workshop, you weren't there, David, about how it's really going to be replaced with a better tool. It was built for this, but who's monitoring it, how we're doing it, what's happening here, and the level of service as a board conversation. So whoever the right person is to start that.
You're having some kind of fun today.
Well, I think what's better if you ask some specific questions, and I can address those questions, but from a higher.
Okay, so let me start with a specific question then. Who monitors cell service on a daily basis? Who responds? How does Town Hall, CCMC even think about the business of running, managing, responding to cell service? Talk about the service component around it.
Well, go ahead, Patrick. But cell service was set up with some automated functions. So it's automated. So if it's something about a facility, it automatically goes to Todd. If it's something about a service area, it automatically goes to Suzanne. If it's something about the CDD, it automatically goes to Rosemary at the CDD. And that's basically how it functions. Now, Patrick gets all the anomalies, or Todd often gets something that should be CDD, but it came to amenities, because people don't know the difference. I mean, we get reports about streetlights being out, and that's really, each individual typically reports that, or I do in my neighborhood, but we report that for them. So, Patrick, take it away. Okay.
Well, there's other items that I get through. Obviously, Suzanne is service area related. She gets quite a few of those, but I'll get things like a pothole in the road. So that process is to notify Osceola County through their report site, and then close it out in our system. Fountain lights out, things like that. We prioritize them as they come in, updates as we have updates, to let people know that reported it, what action's being taken, and give a timeline for that. If we don't meet the timeline, the rule is go back in and you update that with a new timeline. As things change, shipments for products are late or whatever. So that is the process.
What happens, I think you and I talked about this, what happens if it's something that goes to you and it turns out to be CDD's responsibility, say streetlights?
Right.
And then, how does that show back to the resident that sent it in? Because doesn't it show it's been
closed out.
resolved or something? And when it's really, the resolution was to send it to who's supposed to do it. How do we?
Well, the way I do them, I hope everybody else is doing it this way, is you go to who it's assigned to, you hit the edit button, and you can pick from a whole list of people. Like most of mine go back to the CDD, hit CDD, assign it to Rosemary, and hit save. So that automatically goes to her. But I don't think it closes it out on our end. It should.
But what's it show to the resident when they get a response back on cell service?
It should show that it was
Does it say?
Rerouted.
reassigned.
I think it shows that it closed.
It says-
My sense is it shows that it closed. I
That's
mean,
what I
I've
see.
reported streetlights, and and I know that it's not our business, but you forwarded CDD, but it shows back to me, it's been closed, rather than it's been referred.
No,
But does Rosemary comment on it afterwards?
Like now, it says in progress, received. I look at like I'm looking at the lighting, and
So that's something to look at, is what's the communication? When you refer it, does it show that you referred it to Osceola County? Part of that's also a retraining of us as residents that we should call whatever.
Who's responsible?
Yeah.
Well, if it's something that's for Osceola County, they are not partners in cell service with us. So when we refer it, we'll put referred to Osceola County website, and we close it at that point in time. We don't monitor to
Right.
see when it's closed.
And I don't think we have to monitor. I think it's a matter of making that clear to the resident that
Yeah.
we're no longer doing it. We've referred it to the appropriate entity.
It's not CROA's.
And here's where you can contact them for further follow-up if you haven't seen it resolved.
We'll have to look into that, because Patrick and I just spoke on it.
I've never
I don't, we're not aware that it's not given an update, so we'll have to look at cell service and, you know, do a service ticket or whatever.
Yeah, send yourself a message. Send yourself a-
Yeah, because I'll go out and I'll do some myself, just to see how it reacts and responds to me, to see if there's a glitch in it.
And I think Kevin had brought up the notifications 2, 3, and 4 times. You want to talk about that? We talked.
Yeah, so that is an open ticket with Acela, public stuff. And right now, it's sitting in tier 2 technical support. They are aware of it, and they let us know that we're actually the only community organization that the problem sits with. None of their other governmental agencies that are using the software have gone through this. So the number of complaints that we've received here in the office have only been about 3 or 4. I did become aware of you, Vanessa, and
Yeah, I just screenshotted the specific item that Kevin was referring to. Yeah.
So their issue with trying to resolve this is the fact that it's not across the board and it's not affecting all devices. The only device that it is affecting is the iPhone. Android devices there are no issues there. But within the iPhone, it's not a specific model or operating system or anything that they can drill down to, so it's making it a little difficult to try and resolve that.
And they don't make it a high priority.
Right.
If
Because it's
once-
not
Yeah, once you get on the
system-wide.
tiers, Yeah,
Yeah.
if they get 100 complaints of the same
Right,
thing, they make it a
exactly.
priority.
I'm just looking at examples here. Street surface damage. It looks like a pothole, but all it says is received. And that's the last notification. It says 1 month ago. But
Who was it assigned to? Does it show on
it
there?
doesn't,
No, it doesn't
so
say.
it would be like here, just all it says is a received. And all these just say received, and they're a month ago, but I'm just wondering if that's all the resident ever gets to see too. So, they really know.
I think part of the-
resident will get the received notification,
But-
but the rest of the notifications will come under comments. So if you open any one of those requests and look under the comments section, they'll also receive those. There should be some comments in there, especially if they're over a month old.
Yeah, it
Letting
says,
them know
you know,
that-
move from submitted to received, and then sometimes there's a response to that that says, thank you for contacting us with your request. We'll address this as soon as possible.
What kind of?
It's a street light.
A street light.
There was, I think the reality is that when you try to MacGyver an app into doing something it was never really intended to do, there is going to be some level of functionality that just isn't going to happen. And that's really what's occurred here. And I think this is a function of board direction as to whether or not we're trying to find the least expensive way to do things or the most effective way to do things. And God knows, you know, I'm sure we're all in for our own share of criticism in the years to come. But when I look back at some of these decisions, we're now paying the price for some of them. And this is one of them. I think that there's only so much you can do. This is not what Acela does with this app. And so when we try to make it work for us, we run into a glitch and they say, yeah, you're the only ones doing it this way, so you're the ones that are getting the problem. I would like to see us do some investigation as to whether or not there is a better product. You've got 800 communities out there. Surely one of them is using something that works to do this same task. I would hope. And-
I
and
thought you had
whoever-
said they were doing that even, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And we'll do that. Is that on the next month's agenda?
That's another
Maintenance system.
program. Right, maintenance, and MMA, maintenance management system is what he's looking at, and there is one, but I'm not sure, well, we'll see when the time comes.
Wasn't that part of the discussion at the board meeting when we renewed cellular service for the next
Right.
year?
It was.
That she would be looking at a better alternative?
That's what
Right.
we're
Meets our
looking at
function?
that.
Patrick and I
Yeah,
both have
yeah.
been in close.
And that might be part of their maintenance piece, or it might be something separate, or something that could be integrated, ideally. We talked about that 2 years ago.
Yes, we have. It's been
Yeah.
a long, long time in coming.
It's a long
Will
journey.
they replace it totally?
It would.
Yeah. Remember, we agreed to
No, I
re-up
remember
for
the
another
conversation.
year with the Cella, but I think,
Yes.
I think our view then was that this is a pretty wonky app.
Yeah.
What about
As you said,
something,
doing something it wasn't designed for.
what about something like where the power's been out, we got lifeguards manning gates, we decide to close the pool at 8 or something like that? Who's supposed to be responsible for notifying people across Excella? Or is it supposed to be notified across Excella? Excella services?
JR, do you want to come
Well,
on up?
the power outage, we have to receive it here first. And nobody here received notification that there was a power outage that morning. Now, the issue with the gates had nothing to do with the power outage that morning. But I know there's a lot of feedback, a lot from nothing went out, said that there was an issue in town. We didn't find out about that issue until 12 hours later. So Duke has to, somebody has to contact us to let us know that occurred. And when you see stuff go out regarding the roadways, different things like that, I'm the one sending those.
Okay.
And you've been notified by the county or by whoever it is.
Yeah, usually when the paving project is gonna happen, the county notified us, asked me if there's a way I can get that out. We send that out.
And also, when we have, such as pool closure, we had last week, we closed it for some extra chlorination. We notify JR of that, and he sends it out over Cella service, so there's not a very long gap of time before that actually happens.
Well, that one's open here if you want to use this one, Laurel. I just noticed that one's
It was
open.
just a quick question, maybe just asking for JR. With the pool thing, with the gate, would that not have been, because I think there were lifeguards there, would that not have been something where the lifeguard would have just called over to town hall so that you didn't find out 12 hours later, as a question?
The pool gate, is my understanding, happened late in the day. It happened after 6 o'clock.
It was not
No, it was 6
effective all
in
day?
the
Was it-
morning, actually. That was a confusion on the thread, but no, it was a morning. Wasn't it a morning?
There was, I mean, the power was,
I've been there till noon, so I mean, that wouldn't.
Right, but that's still not
My
12 hours
understanding is
later.
the power outage happened in the morning, but what was affecting the gate wasn't related to the power outage. There was
Right.
a problem with the gate that evening. Yes, they are instructed to call over. The problem was we didn't learn about, that they
Gotcha.
took it upon themselves to close the pool at 8
oh,
o'clock.
okay, so literally, they took it upon themselves and didn't tell you. Okay, well, then that caused us a problem.
I see something on the, I think what Todd was saying, now I see, 10 hours ago, there was a street light out, and it says move from submitted to received, and then in the comments, Rosemary responded.
Right.
But nobody knows who Rosemary is.
No?
I mean, I don't. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of us
right,
know,
right.
but a regular citizen would say, she said, thank you for contacting us with your request. We will address this as soon as possible. Is she the one who responds?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I wonder if she would just put parentheses like CCDD, and that way they know it's not CROA.
Well, it should say, in the assigned to, should say C.
It doesn't.
CDD.
It
So
doesn't.
where
I'm
would
looking
I
at the
go
same one. It
for?
doesn't.
I'm just looking
Scroll
at
up
this.
a little bit more. Okay, maybe not.
No.
Mike, did you have a comment?
He's making a cellular service.
He's making a Excella service
It was more of a facial expression that I felt that perhaps I could better
Is it the
understand.
eye rolling?
Well, it was a couple of them, and I would like to at least be able to identify solidly what your concern was.
My concern, Mike Jackson, 413 Sycamore, my concern is that we're looking for a magic solution through an app or a system to solve a managerial problem, and I think you're just chasing a ghost. This system may not be perfect, but certainly with good follow-through, closure, better logging of communication when you pass a subject on to CCDD or whoever it is, and then follow up to make sure you get closure, you'll get a lot better results and better execution than you are getting another system. Please don't get another system. Don't. Cell service, because people don't have confidence in it, has been marginalized at best. And there are a few people still using it. But versus what it could be doing, because it's been marginalized, because people don't have confidence in it, and I personally have had experience with it, submitting things from Spring Lake and so on. You know, it's the same spot that CCD is responsible for over there is still as bad as it's been from the day we bought the house. That's never going to change. But you tell me that you sent it to them, well, okay. And the same thing with the weeds from Yellowstone? Yeah, from Yellowstone and Spring Lake. Susanna knows the problem in Spring Lake, and Gary does with weeds. And everybody submits that and does it, and it doesn't change. So there's just a lack of confidence. So don't do another system. Figure out how to execute better with the system you've got. Hey, brother.
That was Gary's amen for the audience.
There's no secret sauce in a system that's going to help you get a better result. Correct.
Thank you, Mike.
Sometimes we respond to residents whether they realize it or not, though. You pick and choose your battles. It's educational, and that's kind of what's going on here. We're still looking at a new system, and we'll have to make the decision. We'll take your comment in place, because it was under the thing anyway, just for other reasons.
Understand, remember you have a fiduciary responsibility to the residents.
I think we just need to, my concern is just getting feedback back to the residents, let them know what's going on, and who's taking care of it. How long it takes, you know, we can't control CDD, but how long it takes, but I just think it's just communication with the residents, letting them know. Yep, it went to CDD, they're looking, it's their responsibility, they're looking at it, and that's who fixes it.
We have this conversation regularly.
Don't we?
So,
Mhm.
yeah, no, we have this conversation regularly. So we understand, we certainly understand.
Okay.
All right.
I add one quick plug, only because I don't know whether it's a person-by-person thing, but I've done some cell service stuff, and I always get the personal comment back, and she said she sent it on to Lex Center, she sent it to CCDD, so I have actually had the comments and haven't felt like it just dropped off. So maybe something to look at is, does each person handle it slightly differently, and is there some sort of improvement on that? Because certainly all the ones from Susanna have always been nuts on with detail, and I felt like, okay, yeah, it went there.
And same thing has happened with, anytime I've used it, I haven't had any issues, I've always gotten a response.
Right. I just wanted-
Yeah, I think the challenge is, I'm looking at something that was submitted 2 months ago about an exercise equipment door being ajar, TV's not working, and there's no response. It just says it's been submitted. And I think it goes to Mike's question about confidence in the system. I'm okay with a response that says we got it and we can't do anything about it. If that's the reality, let's just tell people the truth. This is something we're not going to deal with for whatever reason. I think sometimes we think by not responding, it'll go away, or or maybe we're just too busy, we got too much going on. I think most people here are adult enough to recognize that the word no means no. And sometimes we're just not going to be able to do what you want, or we can't do it today, or it's going to be 6 months from now, or whatever it is.
Hearts on order.
Yeah, but I do think the app is doing what it can do within the confines of what we've got.
I think so too. And when you get something, Todd, and you look at it and you're going, well, it's not CROA, it's CDD, so you ship it to Rosemary.
Right.
Could we put a comment to the residents saying that this is a CCDD responsibility and it's been forwarded to them?
Certainly can.
I'm just wondering if that would solve a lot of
When
this,
I
so
assign-
residents know that CROA has received it, but it's theirs.
It's an extra step, but.
It's an extra step, but
That's
is that too much, you think? I mean.
No, it's not.
I mean, maybe it requires,
It's not every
maybe it
single
requires
one.
another
Right. Some of
employee
them are.
whose job is just to respond to sell a service and track it. If so, when we come to the budget discussion, let's talk about it. I want to make sure, I don't want management to come to us saying, we're going to give you a lean and mean budget, And then we get to these levels of service questions, and you say, you know what, I just don't have the time to do it. And I don't think it's the highest and best use of your time, Todd, but, you know, if we hired somebody who input this stuff and wrote the responses, maybe it is.
Okay, any last item on cell service? Last agenda item, I'm not sure who's running that one, is certified letters for fines.
Laura and I are gonna handle that. Laura and I actually met last week. As you know, Laura's, 2 weeks into her new job?
Just about, yep.
And so Tony had done some research, and so we reviewed that, and she went through and she looked at how many letters at the most are we sending out, fine letters, and how are they going there? And we got the attorney opinion. You want to talk, Laura?
Okay, so we went through, I just kind of pulled the letters for the last year. And the most we've ever sent fine letters, like I said, within the past year has been about 8 a month.
How many, 8?
8 in 1 month was the most.
Okay, let me define the project, people out in the audience and on TV. We are going to much more serious fines, because we're trying to get people's attention. We've been very successful at getting their attention, and everybody says, well, we've only known about it and got the letters, and if you'd have done certified or registered mail, we would have known, and this would have never come up. And we politely say, okay, thank you, let's go for second letters, because it's a small expense, and we're getting serious about fines.
Yeah, so, I mean, on average, we're talking, in general, 3 to 5 a month would be, like I said, in average. So I've actually talked to CCMC, our corporate office, and the system that we use for the accounting side and the dues and that side is a system called LetterStream. And we have looked into it. All of the backside information hasn't been worked out fully. For the way they pool their information and stuff would still have to be worked out. In general, we're talking a certified letter would be about $6.88, give or take. CCMC does do enough that they get a little bit lower of a price. The one thing I will mention, though, that international certified mail is not available. They do have a version with the registered mail, and that is almost $26 a letter. So, I mean, on average, we'd only be talking probably 100 to 150 a month, give or take, in these in this amount. As of right now, they're saying the turnaround time to send out a certified letter from the time after we would type it and have it ready to send would be at least 2 days. So it would be about 2 days behind us mailing out letters here in the corporate office. So.
My thought is the amount of money, though, that we're talking about here is relatively small. We have a lot of absentee owners. We hear a lot of, the dog ate my letter excuses. For the amount of money we're talking about here, it brings closure to an issue, and it keeps the standards of the town high. You wanted to add
And
something?
I was gonna say, we're also emailing them, and we are contacting them numerous ways. And so I do think it's one less excuse for them, because we'll know if they accept that certified letter or not.
Well, and they're gonna pay for it's part of the fine anyway. Right. You know, at the end of the day.
They're going to pay for it.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah, I have been at every Board of Appeals meeting since I was elected to CROA, and I am remarkably frustrated by the inattention that we get from owners until they realize that it is serious, and then they come in with the excuses. And I think to the extent that we've taken the position, as Brian said, that we're going to charge higher fines and we're going to be more demanding about this, that we should indicate the seriousness of this with a certified letter. I just don't think it's a big deal at that level.
And how do you feel also about then do it internationally as well?
I would.
Absolutely.
My
Given the
guess
number of
is-
international
yeah.
owners that we're dealing with.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, and I don't know if you did the research on this, about what percentage of the letters that you have to send out for fines are actually international?
For fine letters specifically, When it gets to that stage, I'd probably say 35 to 40%.
That's what I thought, okay.
Just because I think it is that whole absentee, they're not around as much, that type of thing. But-
Exactly, they're not here.
Right. I mean, and through the process, we do, even from the first letter to the second letter, they get, every single letter is documented in the system, but they probably get emailed, or maybe called, depending on the situation, another 8, 10 times.
And
in
some
that
of them
process.
have property managers, and then they say it's because their property manager didn't tell them and stuff like that, so.
Yeah.
So you're saying 3 to 5 per month?
On average.
On average, which
I mean,
is,
clearly in
which is
December-
36, which would be 48 a year, 35% are international, so, right?
Yeah, I mean, certain months, clearly December, we're not sending out the letters.
That's,
So
it's
certified
not
can
much
go to
money.
anyone at that address. Registered is actually to the person, right?
It goes to the owner,
So the way
doesn't it?
that Letterstream has presented it is, the certified is, it does get, has to be signed for at the end, it does have to be documented. Registered is, we would use just for the international, which is the same sort of thing, just on an international level, so however that country would handle it
And just
on
to,
their end.
and just to clarify, the person that will actually receive it is the homeowner that is listed on the title.
Right.
Okay.
Not the
Yeah,
property
that's
manager.
what
The property
That's who it's
manager.
addressed to.
Correct, okay. So that's who you're actually getting the signature from, is not the property manager, it's the actual owner of the property
Of the
on a
property.
file.
For
Okay.
a fine letter, yes,
Got it.
correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
So somebody just visiting it and they come to the door can't sign for this?
I think as far as international.
No, I'm talking about,
Oh, here,
No, you
I
got,
can
you got.
sign for my
Right.
yes,
That's what I
in-laws.
anybody at the household.
But
can
it's
sign
signed for, then,
but
at that
It's
has-
signed for.
Has been signed for, so.
It's received.
Yeah.
Gary Hespeth, Spring Lake.
1471 resolution. I do support this because this will get your attention. You already send certified letters for people who are past due on assessments, so this is a great extension to do the very same thing. And as was mentioned earlier, then the cost of that then is passed on to the homeowner, so it just involves some extra time, but not a great expense. Of interest, the reason I came up here is you would have this information in your board book because the spreadsheet that we put together to track first, second, and third letters and fines for covenants gives you this information on a 12-month rolling average automatically. In 2018, it was about 1% of the homeowners received a fine. So this information is available, you just have to ask for it.
Right, but we're talking about second and third letters only, not first letters.
What do you mean, on the spreadsheet or?
Well, no, on the, that we're gonna do with this mailing here.
I was under the impression it was only the fine letters.
It's the fine
The fine
letter.
letter.
Just the fine letter.
Just the fine
Yes.
letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I will tell you, if you wish to go higher, the third letters into going to the covenants committee, on average, is 25 to 40 a month. So you would greatly increase, where
Yeah.
we're only sending fine letters, we're only sending about 5.
My interest was just the fine letter, so that
Okay.
when we got to the Board of Appeals, that there was no question that we had a paper record.
and most people respond to the first letter, or second
Yeah.
email.
And
first
even if
letter,
they don't to
second
the
letter.
first, usually by the second or the third that are saying,
Yeah.
you have to go to covenants, there could possibility of fines. Suddenly, everybody's contacting me left and right.
Oh, yeah.
We see
They
that.
want to get everything
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, there is no fine for second or third letters, so it would be a CROA expense,
Right.
and there's,
No way
we're
to
talking
recover.
dozens,
Yeah.
if not
Yeah.
100 per year.
Right.
You don't want to do that.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
while we've got you up here and we're talking about the appeal process, I want to just clarify and make sure that the board, see if the board agrees. We have a situation in which we have an appeal coming up in which the owner has asked the tenant and the tenant's attorney to appear before us to talk about it. I'll just give my opinion, which is that the tenant's attorney has no standing to speak to us. It is the obligation of the owner if a fine has been imposed, and it is the owner's obligation or the owner's attorney to represent themselves, and that they cannot give that power, and that we have no obligation to listen to the discussion of a tenant or a tenant's attorney. That's my view, but.
Agreed.
You want to carry this?
I mean, we did get a legal opinion on this, and they did say that it is up to the board if you wish to listen to a tenant or a tenant's attorney, but it is not required. So that is what the legal opinion is.
Yeah, I'm firing a shot across the bow here. I mean, I'm not trying to be subtle about this. I want the owners and tenants to hear, unless the board feels differently, that if you show up with an attorney and you're the tenant, and I'm on that Board of Appeals, I'm not going to recognize you. I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, because you are not the person that we are finding potentially.
Finding the owner.
Our
This is
issue
about the owner.
Our issue is the fact that the owner is not adhering to the standards in which the board and our covenants have established. So I actually 100% agree with you, Don.
What do we do in the situation where this is an international resident and they cannot get over here?
They can hire an attorney or a property representative, as others have done, but the problem
That's what
for
I'm
me.
talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about excluding them?
No, this is specifically a tenant, not an owner.
You're just talking about tenants.
The tenant wants to come with an attorney.
Oh,
The
you're not
tenant
talking about
has
the owner wants to send
The
an
tenant has
attorney.
not signed any agreements with CROA. The tenant is not on the covenants. The tenant hasn't done anything except potentially sign a lease. And therefore, that lease is between the tenant and the owner. They have no standing, in my view, and I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking as an
You can
attorney.
speak as me.
But just speaking for myself, I don't think they have any standing to come before us, and therefore, I want them to know that in advance, that they could come, they can pay for their attorney, but the attorney's gonna sit in the back of the room, and the tenant's gonna sit in the back of the room, as far as I'm concerned. I don't wanna hear from them. I wanna hear from the owner or the owner's representative.
And do we need a letter from the owner to state who the representative's going to be? Can they say the tenant's going to be the rep? Is that what, who can be the rep for an owner then? Who would you say?
Counsel to the owner or the
Their-
property manager.
You
Their
said
attorney or
lawyer would have to
property
be the
manager.
one.
What if the owner said the tenant was going to be their rep?
Then, in that case, there's an attorney-client privilege between the owner and that attorney. I don't think the attorney could take on that representation, but if they did, they did. But they'd be here talking on behalf of the owner, and they would be responsible for the owner. And I think that's important to make that distinction, because what the tenant's position is could be quite different than the owner's position. We are not fining the tenant. We are fining potentially the owner. And so I'd be very reluctant as an attorney to take on a representation of my tenant client's owner.
So if the lawyer isn't hired by the owner, then I don't think as a board we should be making a decision on what a tenant or a tenant's attorney has to say, because the ultimate responsibility falls on the owners.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the owner.
I agree.
Agreed?
I don't think you have any argument.
You have a consensus, at least amongst?
Yeah.
Amongst five?
You've got a consensus of 5, that means
Yeah.
it's passed. Okay, so
You might
going
want to
back,
pass that back to the parties that are involved.
It wasn't really a motion.
it really wasn't a
No
motion.
motion.
It was just a,
Yeah.
it's just a consensus.
Do we
Just
need
a
a motion?
random comment.
Do we need a motion on the certified letters for fining, or the
Susan's
certified or
out.
registered? We don't?
That's just direction to
Directive.
management.
Okay, so everybody agrees with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's our agenda. Any other items before we adjourn?
I do have one quick note. I had a request from 2 different residents who were writing or commenting in support of Osceola County candidates for public office, not local, but countywide office, asking if CROA was willing, first, to let these candidates come and speak to a CROA meeting, and secondly, if not, would CROA be interested in sponsoring town hall meetings or candidate debates? And I said I'd raise the question here, that my personal thought was we probably weren't interested in having candidates come and make statements to us, but that I know that in years past, there have been public forums held at various spots in Celebration. I don't think CROA has to be the sponsor, but certainly there could be some of those events.
I think we've done that in the past, and it was, one was what, vote? There was a couple of them, do you remember? Yes, I was saying, because I remember, because I attended several of them. And Herschel obviously is no longer here, But do you know if anybody ever took that over, Mike?
No, the two parties are, I call them two parties, their names. They are inviting candidates in to speak at their monthly meetings.
Okay.
Those have occurred. They've been cycling through all the candidates.
Okay.
I think Alvarez is coming to the Democratic one this month or something. It's the last candidate there. So they're here to another.
Why can't they just go through town hall and rent the place, and why does it have to be a CROA thing?
I don't think it does,
doesn't.
but I said I would raise the question.
I think you're just looking to have a forum for that.
Because we excluded 4th of July parade.
I agree.
Well, the issue is, we let the county, and like, when they wanted to do the 1% tax thing, we let them use the 851 building. It was not a CROA-sponsored event. No CROA member spoke or did anything.
Right.
But I think if they want to rent or
Right.
use the 851 building and book it, that's fine. They don't get the back room. We don't want to destroy the dancing classes and stuff like that, but they can. But otherwise, I don't think talking at a CROA board meeting is where we want them at all.
Yeah.
No, not the meeting.
Thank you.
Any last items?
Motion to adjourn.
Good meeting.
We've fallen apart. We're a minute over.
Oh,
Motion to adjourn.
dear. So moved.
Done. Thank you.
Thank you.
The fate of the Republic.
Well, I can come to your office, Rachel, whatever, okay.